Hi. Let's go further into networks and talk about routers and switches. Routers connect two or more being like entire one, logical subnets, local networks, LANs, and it's also called layer 3 switch. Router is using IP addresses for data transmission. So routers, what router is interested from which IP address information comes and to which it goes, and has something what is called IP address table, so it knows from where the information was sent. Router is connected to LAN. When router is connected to LAN, it has two IP addresses. One private, which is called gateway, and very often it's just number one. So you have your IP range like 192.168 and let's say 30, and then it's .1, and that's your gateway. And then I have a second address which is public. So it's because it works like a gateway between the LAN and WAN, between the LAN and the internet. So when dealing with IP kernels, you will do very little work with routers, except setting up NAT table, which we have already discussed. For your device, like Karma, DVR, and VR, to be able to connect to the router, you must set in it a proper subnet, the same as router. As we already discussed, what is a subnet, what is an IP range, and that's every device on the LAN has to have the same range. And you're setting up the IP range. You're setting IP for your device. Must be in the same range. You must use the mask, and you use the default gateway, which, as I said, usually is 1. So you have your range and the number 1. And as I said, default gateway is simply root address of your router. And now network address translation enables private IP networks to connect to the internet, hence other networks. NAT operates in a router and connects two networks together. I have explained NAT in a lesson about IP addresses. That's example of some old home router. You have a DSL connection which connects you to internet, and you have an Ethernet connections, which is a switch. Switches connect two or more devices within one single LAN, local area network. Devices in the same IP range or subnet, depends how you call it, via internet cable. And it's also called layer 2 switch. Switches use MAC addresses for data transmission. So let's say switch receives the information from and creates something what is called MAC address table, and so information came from the address that, and it should go to address that, and that information is inside the data stream to which address it goes and from which it comes. And switch is storing information on which port it has which address. That's a PoE switch. What we are here, switch. This is an example of PoE switch. You see those two lights. See one cable. This one is disconnected. It's kind of pulled out. But each which is connected fully, plugged in, it has two LEDs. With PoE switches, one LED says that data works, and assuming that's flashing. If it's solid, it's something wrong. Or it can have, and the second LED is for PoE. So some cables on a switch will have no LEDs, like this one, disconnected. We have one LED just for data. Or if this device is using PoE, there will be also another LED light up. And I cannot tell you which color is which, because different makes of switches will use different colors. Usually it's something yellow, green, orange. But which is PoE, you have to look at the manual or description on the panel, which will tell you which is. So if you have computer connected properly, it will have only one LED, and assuming that's working. When it's disconnected, there will be no LED. But if you have a Karma with PoE and it's working properly, you will have two LEDs. One is flashing, one solid. There's also something what's called managed switches, programmable. They can handle more than one LAN, local area network, and this is called virtual LAN, VLAN. And it is achieved by assigning different switch ports to different VLANs. So this switch can be programmed. You can program port parameters, and you can program to which VLAN it belongs, which IP range, let's call it that way. Devices even if you have one switch and you have multiple devices, but you have two VLANs, and those devices are on that one switch, but they are on different VLANs, they cannot talk with each other through that switch, despite being physically on the same device, but logically they're on two different devices. So that switch, which is a single device, logically works like two completely separate switches. VLANs are very good for on a big, for if you have bigger customers, they will have different networks. They network divided for different functions. For instance, you will have a network dedicated to cameras, another network dedicated to phones, another network, let's say, dedicated to general use, like connecting to internet, and may have some other also functions, different networks for different functions. But very often you will, on those bigger installations, you have something like that, which are managed switches. But those companies usually they won't let you touch it. They will tell you which port you can use on which switch, and that's it. And they will tell you, and then you can use whatever range you want. But they won't let you program that. And in most installations I've seen, we don't use them. So most IP cameras installations deal only with unmanaged switches and one or maximum two networks. Why two networks? Because some of the NVRs have two LANs, one for the cameras and second for communicating with the office. They kind of separate two. Obviously NVRs which have just one LAN, so your cameras will be on the same network like computers in the office. But some NVRs are a little bit smarter. They have two LANs, with two ports at the back, and you connect camera to one of them cameras, and you connect the NVR to the office network to the other one, and they'll have completely different ranges. That's kind of security feature. As I said previously, installations for bigger clients may include VLANs, and you may have to be connecting to managed switches, and you will be connecting cameras to their network. It won't be your network. That's again some Ethernet switch. Unmanaged Ethernet switches are very simple devices. They have no settings, nothing has to be programmed. All you can do, you can power up, power down, you can connect or disconnect Ethernet cables or patch cables, however you call them. The only requirement is that your devices are in the same IP range subnet for that thing to work, that local area network. So those unmanaged switches are very simple. Once you understand that you must be in the same range, it's very easy to work with them. So switches are not only simple to manage, but also easy to expand. If your switch doesn't have enough ports, Ethernet sockets, and you cannot replace it for whatever reason, I don't know, client won't let you, you can expand it by simply connecting another switch via Internet cable, straight through cable. In that manner, you can also place switches in multiple locations in your building to have short connection to your cameras. So you have PoE cameras, and you have that limitation up to 100 meters, and building is big, multiple floors, and floor plan is really large. So you can have one switch on each floor, and one in the comms room, and then on each floor cameras connected to that switch on that floor, and then that switch from the floor connected to the main switch in the comms room. And that way your distance between the switches and the cameras and switches will be way below 100 meters. Just make sure that you have a plan and you have all the locations of your equipment marked. I've been on installations where it was just madness that nobody knew where the equipment was, and most of the time I wasted just looking for the equipment, trying to find where the switch is. So I see that it's very easy to find the comms room, but then some I won't even say what it was because it's just ridiculous. But anyway, after a few hours we found those switches. Okay, that's what I can say. I don't want to tell you anything more about it. So make sure that you have all the locations marked. There's some building plan, and you have marked where the switches are, where the cameras are, where the power supplies are. Just make sure about that. Thank you.